I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts. That was our new intro. I sat in front of my laptop for like 3 hours and put that together. I'm pretty happy with it. I hope everyone else likes it. Yeah, enjoy the breakdown. The giveaway's available and follow the instructions. And yeah, appreciate you all, guys. Peace.
And welcome to episode 37 of UFC Addicts. My name is Aaron, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton, and we are here to break down the latest UFC card, this being UFC Fight Night 155, Jermaine Randamie versus Aspen Ladd from Golden One Center in Sacramento, California, USA. A little fun fact before I turn it over to who we're all here to listen to. UFC 37, subtitled High Impact, took place at CenturyLink Center in Louisiana. The main event, a middleweight banger between Muriel Bustamante and Matt Lindland. So all of you casuals out there saying this card or next card or whatever card is terrible, go ahead and take a look at UFC 37, which was a pay-per-view.
Wow.
Had Rico Rodriguez fighting some guy and BJ Penn fighting 3-1 favorite of us all, Paul Creighton. So that's how BJ Penn's legacy was built.
We've evolved. The UFC has evolved.
Yeah, and here's our co-host, the man we're all here to listen to. Late. What up, buddy?
What's up, bro? Okay, so UFC 239, the card delivered. There was some great fights on that card. A few names, and I'm sure you all know the names. We're going to start with Yadong Song. That punch.
The unsung hero of the fucking card, man.
Yeah.
Yadong Song. Right
that
after that
punch.
knockout happened.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, it was... I mean, I was asking you before the other knockouts on the night. I was like, that's a knockout of the year contender, isn't it?
For sure. And like, that guy is just...
At the end of the card, it was hard to even remember it.
Yeah.
What a card.
It was such a good, like, punch, man. 10 out of 10. And we was praising how good he was before the card. And we went with the experience in Perez. But Joe Rogan highlighted how tough Perez is. And he was asleep on the feet. That's how perfect that punch was. Luke Rockhold, another jaw broken. Jan Blachowicz spoiled the party at 205.
Yeah, he sure did that. Yeah, I was. I was definitely worried. That was at that point. I had also picked Diego, which Diego he didn't embarrass himself. I'll say that much. But he was just outgunned. But our three disagreements on the night, you got the first two, and I was a little bit worried. And then we got to the people's main event of the night, and again, the people's main event came through. Yeah. And this time it came through in 5 seconds. And Masvidal, on top about Masvidal's flying knee on Askren. I've been a huge fan of Ben Askren for a very long time. I thought he got to the UFC way too late. I was very glad when he got there. Absolutely felt he deserved to be there. I picked Masvidal. I believe I picked Masvidal with a first-round KO as well. Mm-hmm. What I did not obviously anticipate is what happened. And what happened was not a lucky shot. So people who are calling... I just have a real issue with... last week it was back of the head, which caused a little controversy with some people. I get it. That's fine. This week, I'm hoping this doesn't cause controversy, but if it does, I'm okay with it. There's no such thing as a lucky shot, especially when it is a flying knee that you've been practicing and have come out in other fights throwing. It also puts you in the most risk possible if you don't land it. Mm-hmm. So,
well, the thing is...
He meant to hit the head. It hit the head. That's not a lucky shot.
Yeah. So... 5 seconds it took, right? But it actually took 2 seconds. Ben Askren was out in 2 seconds. And, you know, I understand where people are coming from when they say it's lucky, but at the same time, 100% Jorge Masvidal meant to do that. And there's so much evidence that he meant to do that. The way he speaks about it post-fight, the way he explains with the hands behind the back, and he saw the acknowledgement from Ben like, I'm going to come forward and put my head down. Jorge Masvidal 100% meant to set greatness, and he did exactly that. There's just no other way of saying it. It was just brilliant.
He's 50 fight veteran. This by no means discounts what Askren has done to this point. 19-0. The good wrestling. I believe I mentioned it on the podcast with that Burroughs wrestling exhibition, but that wrestling exhibition, maybe it didn't affect Askren that much, but I'm telling you, it affected how other people viewed him. Mm-hmm. It affected how other people, kind of saw him, and I think it was kind of a sign that, he was not quite the same guy he used to be earlier on in his career, in my opinion. But either way, Ben Askren maintains his 0 significant strikes through his first 2 fights in the UFC. Does not change my opinion that he choked out Robbie Lawler because he did. It was an amazing knockout. I mean, everybody who I know is talking about that knockout. Jorge Masvidal, 50 fights into his career, finally getting some recognition, or more recognition than he's gotten. And I think Masvidal just was very aware that Ben Askren thought he was stupid. And he just played right into it. And right down to leaning back and thinking, I'm just going to let you put your head into my crotch. Like,
well, there's one name we have to speak about before we get into this card. One final name. And it's Amanda Nunes. A lot of people said she's the greatest of all time before this fight. You finished Cyborg with her own medicine, power punches and precision. And now you go ahead and you finish Holly Holm with her own medicine, with the head kick. There's just no argument anymore whether Amanda Nunes is the greatest of all time. She is just...
It was in one round.
I know. Amazing. And I know Holly Holm's like 2-5 in her last 7 or something now, but at the end of the day, Holly Holm was an ex-champion, and Amanda Nunes just finished her with her own medicine. Just beautiful. Yeah, I don't want to get into the John Jones stuff too much. Obviously, some people scored the 5th round to Santos, some scored the 5th round to John, some people scored the 2nd round differently. There's no need to get into that too much. All I'm going to say is Thiago Santos impressed me so much with how dangerous he was in the 4th and 5th round. Credit to that man. Credit to that man.
I give him credit, and I don't want to get into it too much either, but I do believe that's going to be the best performance we ever see out of Thiago Santos.
Mm-hmm. Just amazing. The heart.
It is amazing. I do give him a lot of credit, and I do think that a rematch would look very different, mostly because I think John Jones would remember he could wrestle.
Yeah.
But either way, great card, top to bottom, really delivered. I felt like good on you, International Fight Week. You came through this, and this is a card that actually before the fights happened, I think we both agreed we were looking forward to a little more than last week's card, 239. So that's got a pretty big.
Yeah, it's not going to do it, but there's some fights on this card that are just who the hell knows.
Yeah, most of them that feel that way this week to me, more so than usual. So
let's do it.
Let's jump into it. I will lead us off here. We are starting at 135, the bantamweight division, with a matchup between Benito Lopez and Vincent Morales. It's Vincent, correct?
Yep.
All Vince, right. Yep. I will be breaking down Benito Lopez, the 24-year-old Team Alpha male. I believe they're going to Team Alpha soon or something, right?
I've heard that too, yeah.
So, but they're still Team Alpha male as of now. We're going to see a lot of Team Alpha male on this card, being in Sacramento. Benito Lopez, 9-1, 2 TKOs, 3 submissions. He is 1-1. He got a decision win over Albert Morales by decision. A decision win by decision back in 2017. It was a fine fight, kind of close, but Benito did enough to win. Similar to his Contender Series fight, which was a split decision, take a shot of apple juice for the Contender Series. And then he was out for a year before he lost to Manny Bermudez. So I'm not sure what he was dealing with, but he came back and he got submitted in about 3 minutes by Manny. So like most people who get submitted by Manny in the first round. But I don't know. He looks like he tries to make his fights kind of a little bit of a stand-up battle before moving him to the ground. And I think with Moares, Moares has really good wrestling and good stand-up. So I think he matches up pretty well with Benito, to be honest with you. So I'm going to take Moares, and I'll take him to get a TKO in round 2. But this is a close fight. Possibly could go to decision, but I feel pretty good with Moares here.
Decent. Okay, so Vince Moares comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Previously fighting on the Contender Series, he lost to Pilate, and he was like a minus 300 in that fight. I took Pilate, and that's literally one of my favorite Contender Series fights. It's so good. If you've got Fight Pass, go and watch that fight. Debut against Song Yadong, we saw him literally 2 nights ago, and he lost that fight, but he competed. He really competed in that fight. He didn't look terrible. He lost, but competed with a really
put away. Didn't get put away by him.
Exactly. He competed with a hot prospect, and then in the Zahabi fight, he won that fight. He looked pretty sharp. One thing you mentioned was his wrestling. He is a good wrestler, and we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that in these 2 fights. So I'm expecting him to use his foundation here. Benito Lopez struggles a little bit with grappling, and he does, he's looking to be flashy and throw those high kicks and knees. So yeah, if Vince Moares looks to have a kickboxing battle, then maybe it's a close fight. If he looks to implement kickboxing with grappling, then I see the fight favouring him. So we're pretty much, picking the same thing here. So I'll take Vince Moares via decision.
All right, fair enough. Vince started out as a plus 200 underdog. Wish I could have gotten that.
That's insane.
Yeah, he is now a minus 150 favorite.
Wow.
Benito plus 125.
Wow. So, I thought I was going to get dog money.
I think Vince's odds have gone up significantly since people saw how good Penguin is. Or not Penguin, sorry. Song Yadong. So racist of me. I apologize.
Well, mate, I'm sure Penguin is going to want to look like Song Yadong here. So
I agree 100%. I don't think Penguin would have any problem getting confused with Song Yadong after that last fight. So, But yeah, we agree. And the odds had gone from +2 for Vince to minus 150 now. So again, get on those odds early if you see a price you like, because it may not even say that direction. So,
okay, so the next fight we have Livia Souza versus Brianna Van Buren. So Brianna, she comes into this fight 8-2 as a pro, previously fighting in Invicta, and from what I've seen is just a kickboxer really. She will look to take you down. But in this fight, I don't see that happening. So I just see a kickboxer. Because we know how talented Livia is with her jiu-jitsu. So yeah, it's a kickboxer versus a grappler. It's hard to decide, man. Because watching a few of her fights, she looks pretty decent. Quite measured. Doesn't get hit much. Her best competition is probably Juliana Lima. So, not the greatest. Yeah, it's a tough pick. I think she's not going to look for the takedown, and she's just going to be a kickboxer. So I pretty much see Livia catching a kick at some point and taking the fight to the mat. So that's probably the difference here. So I'm going to favour the grappler. I'll take Livia Souza to get a submission in round number 2.
Okay. I will be breaking down one of my favorites, actually, lately. Livia Renata Souza, the Brazilian gangster. The 28-year-old is 13-1. Her one loss is coming to Angela Hill back in Invicta for the strawweight title, actually. It was a really good fight. Really kept on its feet a lot, and I think a fight that Souza learned a lot from, and she'll take a lot of those lessons into this fight. She's got 2 TKOs and 7 subs in her 13 wins. She's 2-0 in the UFC. She had a split win over a very overweight Sarah Ferrota. I believe she was 8 pounds overweight for that fight, if I remember correctly.
Massive.
And she was already big enough, and Souza was definitely the smaller, shorter fighter, and Souza competed everywhere, grappling and on the feet. So I was really actually impressed from that split decision win. And then her first round sub of Alex Chambers, she looked amazing in it. She debuted as a minus 500, I believe, or something like that. So she was one of the things I really liked about the Ferreira fight is that was such a bigger, stronger opponent. She was able to get by it. I think with the Bulldog here, we may see a battle on the feet a little bit, and her having to take it down and grapple a little bit. I think this is going to be a close one, though, so I'm going to take Souza, but I think that Van Buren, she's 5 foot. She's going to have a very small neck, small arms to be able to get a hold of and submit, I think. A lot of times these more compact fighters, I think it's a big reason why Diego is relentless, but I think his smaller, more compact frame has made him hard to submit, as opposed to, a bigger. So I won't give her the submission here, but I will take Souza as well. And I think Souza is finally going to be the bigger fighter in there. She may not be stronger, but she's going to be at least taller and frame-wise a little bigger, so that's going to be new for her. And I think the experience is the difference, but this one may be a little closer than people think.
Nice.
And by a little closer than people think, Van Buren's the favorite. So
wow.
minus 125 plus 105 for Libya. So
wow.
I'm
pretty sure she was an Invicta champion as well.
You're correct.
Yeah. I mean, if people are favouring the kickboxing, fair enough, but I don't know, man. She looks for takedowns when she can, but I don't see her doing that here. So
yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. We will move on to the 125 division, correct?
35.
135, okay. Between, let's call him Pingwan and Jonathan Martinez. First name of Pingwan is Lou, but that's not as fun. So I'll be breaking down the 24-year-old Jonathan Martinez. He's 10-2 with 5 TKOs, 2 submissions. He's now 1-1. He beat Waliji Buren by decision after losing a decision on short notice to Soccer Mom. And basically, Martinez just didn't have what it took to beat Soccer Mom. He did a really admirable job of hanging in there on short notice. But Soccer Mom was able to knock him down twice in that fight. And Martinez was able to land some good elbows and other strikes, but he just didn't quite have the firepower in that fight. I don't know if it was a short notice or what, but Martinez was the fresher fighter in rounds 2 and 3, which is a lot of what allowed me to take him against Waliji Buren pretty clearly. And he definitely had a much more appropriate opponent in Buren for a second fight, and he kind of cruised to his decision. And now he's back to having a really tough third fight. So he's got a well-rounded guy in Pingwan, and I think Martinez is going to run into similar obstacles he did in his debut. I just think Pingwan is just a little bit better in every area from Martinez, and I don't know if he gets to finish, but I'll take Pingwan by decision.
Nice breakdown. Okay, Pingwan Lee comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC. His debut was in Germany against Damian Stasic, I believe. I was at that fight. He just looked really well-rounded, like you said. Debut really impressive. And then he fought Martin Day, who is a flyweight, I would believe, just like Jonathan Martinez is naturally a flyweight. And, the difference in that fight was the size of Pingwan. He implemented his grappling. I believe it was a split win. He didn't look too impressive like he did in his debut. But he didn't take no chances. He's fighting a quicker kickboxer. He's got the size advantage, the strength advantage, the grappling advantage, and that's what he did in that fight. And I see that being pretty much the same thing here. I think he's just a stronger guy, he's a bigger guy, and if he implements his grappling against a quicker kickboxer in Jonathan Martinez, I see him pretty much cruising to a decision. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Pingwan Lee to win via decision.
Yep. Perfect breakdown, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We agree. So Pingwan, he opened up as a minus 273 favorite.
It's a little heavy.
He is now a minus 130 favorite.
Yeah.
Plus one for Martinez.
Yeah. Okay. So the opening price bit heavy.
Yeah.
Now it's looking light, but that line is pretty decent because I'm quite confident in Pingwan. If he implements his grappling here, he should run away with the fight. So that minus 130.
Looking at the rest of these fights on this card, I'd say that's one of my more confident picks.
Yeah, that could definitely be up to minus 160, 170 is where it probably should be.
Yeah, minus 130 right now started at nearly 300.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll be betting that line after this pod.
Yep. Okay. You want to lead us into our next fight, which is a weird one?
Yep. Okay. So Darren Elkins versus Ryan Hall, and I'll be breaking down Ryan Hall. I believe he's 3-0 inside the UFC, but his record doesn't really matter. For the listeners that don't know much about Ryan Hall, he's an extremely talented jiu-jitsu practitioner, and literally, I'm talking probably top 5 in the world. And that's no exaggeration. He is an extremely talented jiu-jitsu practitioner. But that's all he is. And that's, when I say that's all he is, I'm not taking away from him because I just said he's top 5 in the world at what he does. So, he's great. But MMA is more than jiu-jitsu. So, in my opinion, his striking is pretty much non-existent. In the BJ Penn fight, BJ Penn was winning right up until the point Ryan Hall displayed how brilliant he is at jiu-jitsu. So, once again, it's the same thing here, and it's going to be the same thing in every single one of his fights. He's not looking to strike with you. He's looking to grab you, or heel hook you the way he did BJ Penn. He's looking to just show how good he is at jiu-jitsu. So Darren Elkins, for his whole career, he's beat the odds. He's gritty. He's a hard worker. And this is the type of fight Darren Elkins would just win, being an underdog. I have seen the line. It's pretty close. So a lot of faith going into Darren Elkins. The way I see it is literally the same way I would have said Ben Askren and Jorge Masvidal is. But the only difference is Ryan Hall literally, is the same as Ben Askren in a way. He's not going to strike with you. But Darren Elkins hasn't got, he's not going to run at Ryan Hall with a flying knee. But for every minute the fight isn't in a grappling exchange, Darren Elkins is going to win. If Ryan Hall does pull guard, I could see Darren Elkins scrambling away 1 or 2 times maybe. But if it's a constant thing over 15 minutes, Darren Elkins will get subbed. So it's really personal preference, this one. Are you going to believe in the skills of Ryan Hall and eventually he's going to get Darren Elkins, or are you going to take the guy who's beat the odds more than not and survive 15 minutes and not get subbed? So it's one or the other. I'm going to take Darren Elkins to survive for 15 minutes and not get subbed and win a decision. Okay.
I'll be breaking down Darren the Damage Elkins. The 35-year-old Team Alpha male product is 24-7, currently on a 2-fight losing streak to Ricardo Lamas and Alexander Volkanovski. Ricardo did get a stoppage late in the third with strikes. Prior to those 2 fights, Elkins was on a 6-fight win streak in which he was an underdog in 4 of the 6 fights, including a plus 500 win over Mirsad.
Mm-hmm.
We know who Darren is. We also know who Ryan Hall is. And Darren is an absolute grinder. He unfortunately has been living up to his nickname way too much lately and taking a lot of damage. And I think that he can get a hold of anybody in the division, but sometimes he goes for those entries with kind of no regards for the amount of damage or risk he puts himself in. And I think that could possibly be an issue here. But on the feet, I've seen a lot of improvements in him. and he is still limited there, but he really has improved. And Hall has absolutely no stand-up ability at all. But if he's going to try to stand up with someone, it'd be with someone like Darren Elkins. So I think that the better striking, the strength of Elkins, and his avoidance of subs is going to be the difference. And I'll agree with you and take Elkins by decision.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So what was the odds? Are they like plus 100 for Elkins? That's the last odds I saw.
Minus 105 Elkins, minus 115 for Ryan Hall.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, pretty much the same. Yeah, I'm happy to take the guy that's, always done it. He got brutally beat by Ricardo Lamas, but like I said, and you said as well, Ryan Hall has no stand-up, and, he doesn't want to have stand-up. He wants to use his jiu-jitsu. He's one of the best ever to do it, so there's no surprises if he does get the sub, but it's personal preference, this one.
I think if it does go to the ground, it's with Darren pushing him up against the cage and not allowing him to extend. I think that's got to be kind of the keys for the fight for him. If he is on the ground, it can't be in the middle of the octagon where Ryan Hall can extend the legs and possibly get a hold of an ankle or a toe hold or something. So other than that, I think most places this goes, Darren should be able to handle it. And it makes sense he's not an underdog here. I think it would be a strange fight to have him as an underdog. So
the odds are decent.
Yeah. So far, I've thought the odds are much better this week than last.
Yeah, for real. There's so many who the hell knows on this card.
Yep. Speaking of who the hell knows, our next fight I'll lead us into between Juliana Pena and Nico Montano at bantamweight. Juliana Pena, the new mother who hasn't fought since January of 2017.
2.5 years.
I was at her last fight, and that was in Denver. So, she was subbed by Shevchenko in that fight. She's 8-3 overall, 2 TKOs, 3 submissions, Ultimate Fighter winner. In her fight against Valentina and many other fights, her wrestling's been the majority of her game plan. She's had a kid, and since that fight, and appears to be ready to get back in there. This is a really strange, confusing fight for me to kind of read here. Both fighters have been out a while. On one hand, I can see Juliana just being bigger and stronger. But on the other hand, I think Nico has more places she can have success in this fight. She may be able to make this more of a stand-up battle and use her movement. And I think that Nico was never exactly comfortable at 125, and maybe she's more comfortable at this weight. So I'm actually going to take Nico to get a decision and show some comfort in her new weight class. I get it. She got stripped of her title, but she is a UFC champion, although it was through the Ultimate Fighter she got it. But either way, I think that for Nico to get to fight somebody who's been out longer than she's been out is pretty fortunate circumstance for her. So I think this is a spot where I'm comfortable taking a dog and so I'll take Nico to get a decision. I think her stand-up's going to be better, and I think she'll be able to keep it on the feet.
Okay. Well, I agree with the most part of what you're saying, but I have a slightly different view. So, Nico Montano, you took her. I'm breaking her down. She comes into this fight 1-0. She's been off for a year and a half. You said Juliana's been off for 2.5 years as well. So it is a strange fight. You're looking to break it down, but there's layoffs and it looks a bit weird. Nico's fought good competition in her career, and Juliana's fought good competition as well. I don't really know how to decide who's going to win the fight, but one thing has been speaking to me, and I have been a little bit back and forth in this fight, but one thing is speaking to me a little bit. Both of these girls were supposed to, or have, fought Valentina. Now, you was at her last fight, Juliana, and she lost that fight. She lost to Valentina, but she looked really, really good in that fight. You don't just hold Valentina against the fence and land powerful knees unless you're really about the grappling life. Now, she lost that fight, but she looked really good in that fight. Now, Nico Montano was supposed to fight Valentina. She weighed in. She got scared. She pulled out. So the thing that's talking to me here is mindset. I think Juliana Pena has a better mindset. And you said, for Nico, you're coming back a year and a half, and it's pretty fortunate that you're fighting a girl that's been off longer. I feel like, Juliana, you've been off for 2.5 years. Now you're going to be given a return fight against a girl who was mentally too small to fight a girl who, is just looking fire. Every single fight she looks fire, with the head kick with Jessica I, the way she dismantled JJ. She just improves every fight. And if you look at her loss to Valentina, Juliana, she just looks so good in that fight. So I think mindset here might be the difference. And just the way Juliana was able to grapple Valentina and the strength. I think Nico's going to really have a tough time if she wants to try and implement her grappling. So, it's a tough fight, really weird. I've been back and forth. But I'm gonna decide on mindset. So I'm going to take Juliana Pena to get a submission in round number 2.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I hear you on all that stuff, but that momentum is so dead at this point from 2.5 years ago that I think that a lot of Juliana's mindset was possibly affected in that fight.
She had a terrible shoulder injury too in that fight, I believe.
Yeah, well, which definitely wasn't made better by the armbar.
Yeah,
so
it was before the armbar too.
Yeah, and so either way, I think that Juliana fought a perfect fight. It was exactly where she wanted to be the whole time, and she lost the fight. That can also play some real mind games on you, because now you're thinking, where can I really take the fight if I can't have it exactly where I want it, how I wanted it? I still lose. So now she's a mother. Is her first love still fighting? We'll see. All those things are factors, are unknowns. The odds are known, and it's minus 185 for Juliana Pena. So
could be a little lower, but I'd expect her to be a favorite.
I would too, but I think minus 185, nearly a minus 200 favorite, is a little much.
It's a little much, but it's no Nordive at -5.
True. Yeah, true. True. Yeah, it opened up at plus 130 for Nico, minus 150. That's what it should be.
Yeah, that sounds closer to the truth.
I think Nico is not just fighting for a win here. I think she's fighting to reestablish the legitimacy of herself as a fighter. If she loses this fight, every casual is going to, who knows who Nico is going to just be like, well, that's what I expected to happen. That's why she ran from Valentina. She's not just fighting for a win here. I think she's fighting to maintain legitimacy. And this is by no means an easy fight for Nico. And if she wins this, I'll be more than impressed. So
it's a tough one. I've been back and forth for the last 2 days.
Yeah, it's my first underdog of the night. I'm taking I'm taking an underdog in both female fights right now. So fair enough. Sometimes that's how it is. I will move us on to a featherweight fight between Andre Touchy-Fili and Sheymon Moares. I will be breaking down Sheymon Moares. 11-3. He is 2-2 in the UFC, losing his last fight to Sadiq Youssef, although it was a closer fight than a lot of people expected. He beat both Julio Arce and Matt Sales, both of those as underdogs. Julio Arce, he was over a 200 underdog. And his debut being a loss to Zabit. So the 2 guys he's beat have definitely been decent. The 2 guys he lost to have been more than decent. Sheymon is just pretty violent guy in there when he's in there. He gives and takes a lot of damage. There's usually blood in his fights. And most of his fights have been pretty closely contested. And I expect this to be another really close fight. I think Moares is a little sharper and will be a little more aggressive, but that aggressiveness can easily be used against him here with Fili. And I think that octagon control will be a big key, and who performs that best. I'm going to take Sheymon, and I'll actually take him to get a 3rd-round TKO. So
interesting.
I think this is a really close fight, but I'll take Sheymon to have a little bit of a coming out party and get the finish, maybe even after losing a round or two.
Nice. Okay. Andre Touchy-Feely comes into this fight, 7 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. Another guy training out of Team Alpha Male. And I'm going to be honest. I just love this guy's style. I'm just going to be completely honest. I can't remember the last time I picked against Andre Fili. I just love his style, man. He's always down to go technique for technique. His jab in his last fight was so fire. And just the way he can, just his volume, his volume standing in front of you, technique for technique. The way he's just willing to outpoint you and just be the better guy in that round. That's what really impresses me with Touchy-Feely. Sheymon Moares, a very, very violent kickboxer. In some of his fights, he slows down a lot, but you watch those fights and it's always due to the grappling. But his last fight was against Sadiq Youssef, and there wasn't too much grappling in that fight, and he still slowed down. So, I don't see there being grappling in this fight either. I don't think Andre Fili is going to try grapple, or I'd be, surprised if Sheymon did it either. But Andre Fili, man, like he's down to go technique for technique. And I just see, that late second round and that third round, Andre Fili just landing that jab and just outscoring Sheymon a little bit. But it is a very, very, very close fight. Because both guys have very good technique when it comes to kickboxing, and I'm very sure neither guy are gonna shy away from stamping their dominance in this fight. So this is a low-key fight of the night for me. It's a very good fight, but like I said at the start of the breakdown, I can't remember the last time I picked against Touchy-Feely. So I'm going to take him to win a decision, and probably a very close one.
Yeah, I guess I do agree with you that often Sheymon kind of loses gas as the fights go, but his fights have been so high paced.
Even against Matt Sales.
Yeah, and that's the fight that I was about to mention, which is why I'm actually picking a late TKO. Is in that fight, I saw that, he started out the fight ahead on Matt, then Matt started making a real run back at him, and it caused Moares to raise his game even more in the threshold and the amount of violence he was putting out. And so I honestly see Fili starting out and really out-techniquing him early in the fight and maybe causing some real urgency and desperation on Moares, and that being what causes the third round knockout. So that's how I am envisioning it now.
What are the odds in envisioning?
So the odds are seeming to, they opened at plus 110 for Sheymon, minus 140 for Fili. They're now minus 145 for Sheymon, plus 115 for Fili. So they're with me.
They're close, and they're spot on. That's telling the truth. This fight is so close.
Yeah.
On paper.
The thing with Fili is he's got 12 fights in the UFC, which I really like. But the thing with Sheymon is that all 5 of his fights have been against legit competition. So, or all 4, and this one.
He's had a really tough start. That career is a real, I think he got Zabit in his debut, did he?
Exactly. And he hung in there with Zabit the whole time.
Oh.
That was a good fight.
Moving on to Mike Rodriguez versus, it was supposed to be Jean Volonté, but it's now John Allan. And I'll be breaking down Mike Rodriguez. Comes into this fight 1-1 inside the UFC. He's another guy I've seen live. I was at his debut in New York. He fought Devin Clark. And the story of that fight was the grappling. Mike Rodriguez looked very dangerous when it comes to striking, but Devin Clark just doing what Devin Clark does. Take down, grapple, pressure, put against the fence. And Mike Rodriguez, tough debut, tough loss. And then he fought Adam Milstead, and I'm pretty sure he was a slight underdog. And me and you, Brooks, we were all over that price, and it was a clean TKO. I think it was like a knee to the body, and then just a clean, straight down the middle. Yeah, it was beautiful. So yeah, we're looking at this fight. I'm sure you're going to go into John Allan with the Contender Series, so I won't mention much there. What I will say is the Volante fight is a tougher fight than this, I think. I just see Mike Rodriguez being a powerful 205er. And getting a round 1 TKO, to be honest. I don't see Mike Rodriguez losing this. It's probably one of my most confident picks. So, but I will say at one point, Megan Anderson was one of my most confident picks. So maybe Fade, my most confident pick. But I'm going to take Mike Rodriguez, round 1 TKO.
Okay, I will be breaking down the 26-year-old Brazilian John Allan. He's 6'3", so these are two big boys at 205. He's 13-5 overall, 5 TKOs, 2 submissions. He was on the Contender Series with Dana White. Take your shot, Apple Juice. He did get his arm broken by Vinicius in the first round and still fought through until a second round sub. So toughness is not a question with him. He fought a 6-0 guy, undefeated guy about a month ago, and really showed off his Muay Thai in that fight. He put his opponent away in round 2, but his opponent looked like a good guy and looked like a guy similar to Rodriguez, although the experience not quite there. And like I said, that was a month ago, and Allan took quite a bit of damage in that fight on the feet also. So this is a really quick turnaround, short notice. I anticipate another really active stand-up war here. And I have Rodriguez putting him away also in round 1 by TKO. Again, the amount of damage Allan took in his last fight, I don't know how he's getting cleared to fight so quickly. And Allan does have some good power and can throw in volumes at times, but this fight is fought at Mike Rodriguez's pace. So I expect this to be fought at a slow pace. Pun intended there, since that's his nickname, is slow. So Mike Rodriguez, I have with a first round TKO finish. I assume he's a pretty decent favorite. He's not on here as of now. It's still with John Volante. But I don't see the price being much different from this price.
Yeah,
so the price
probably even more.
Well, it's minus 335 plus 255 with Volante.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be at least that.
Yeah, it will be that, I think. I don't see him being Nordiv territory.
Yeah, maybe just, if you're going to pick Mike Rodriguez, maybe just pick TKO instead of overall.
He's got some good subs being on Lozon MMA too, though.
Yeah, but that second fight, that most recent fight, it was just vicious. I mean, you saw glimpses of it, the striking and power in the debut, but the story was the grappling, and then you see when the grappling isn't the story, and it's just scary. So that, watch out for Mike Rodriguez, man, because I think he could go on like a 5-fight, 6-fight win streak.
Yeah, him. Originally Rodriguez and a couple other guys from the Contender Series around that weight class all got on. Charles Bird and Carl Roberson and Ryan Spann. They all were, I think, within a couple weeks of each other.
Yeah,
those were getting off the Contender Series. So that Contender Series has revitalized an entire division in a way. The 205 division getting a lot of legit guys. I'm excited to see Allan too, even though we lost on there. So. A sleeper fight of the night. We are going into the 185 division now, and this is a very close fight between Marvin Vettori and Cesar Ferreira. I will be breaking down the Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori. He fights out of King's MMA. That's another camp with quite a few guys fighting tonight. So, 12-3 and 1 overall, 1 TKO and 4 submissions. He's 2-2-1 in the UFC. Honestly, his notable wins aren't too notable. They're over Alfredo Duda and Vitor Miranda. So don't know too much about those. His losses were to pretty good guys. He lost a unanimous decision to Shoeface, where he kind of was able to hang in there with the grappling, but was always behind. And then he had a split decision loss to Israel Adesanya, where he really did a great job of limiting Adesanya's rhythm. A lot of people actually had Vettori winning that fight. It's definitely the worst Adesanya's looked in his UFC career. And Vettori, it's really refreshing. He's now in his 6th fight, and he's still a middleweight. He hasn't gone down to 170 for a minute or gone up to 205. He stayed at middleweight. He's now in his 6th fight in the division. And by remaining at 185, I've seen him getting more and more physically strong. He seems more comfortable and solid for the weight class. He's got a good clinch game, good overall grappling. His striking is kind of rudimentary, but I just would like to see him add a little more volume and not these single power shots that he does. He's only 25, so he's going to keep getting better. And he's been in the UFC for some time now, so I'm interested to see how that affects him moving forward. And yeah, if he can handle a guy who's been, fighting really effectively over the past few years in Cesar Ferreira, I think these guys mirror each other in a lot of ways. I think this is an extremely close fight, and I think that for Ferreira, you cannot let him get into a position where he has the potential for arm triangles.
Mm-hmm.
It is clearly where Ferreira feels very comfortable, and when he gets into that position, he can put away his opponent. I'm going to take Marvin to be able to avoid that and overall implement his game more effectively. I'll take Marvin Vettori by decision in a close fight, but I could easily see Ferreira snatching up an arm triangle at any point. I think that is his preferred grappling, and the best way he has to win this fight.
Nice. Okay, Cesar Ferreira comes into this fight 9-5 inside the UFC. He's been around the game now for a good 12 or 13 years. Primarily known as a submission artist, like you said. Chin tested a few times, but he's just that guy where if he can fight his fight, it looks very good. If he can't fight his fight, then he struggles. So, you look at his fight against Ian Heinisch, okay performance, but really slowed down when he couldn't fight his fight. So, yep. Marvin Vettori, you referred to the Adesanya fight, and that was a very key part of your breakdown, in my opinion, because that fight, that is, if anyone can tell me another time when anyone ended up on Adesanya, I'd love to know, because Tavares tried, he didn't do it. Brunson tried, it didn't happen, and even Gastelum couldn't end up on top of Adesanya. Marvin Vettori has been the closest fighter to beating Adesanya. Now, that win that Adesanya got, Marvin Vettori made him such a better fighter, and that is such a highlight in spotting a world beater. Like, Adesanya nearly lost that fight, and he got taught a good lesson, and since then his takedown defense, his rhythm, his movement, it's improved even more. Every fight he improves. So Marvin Vettori, he's a fairly well-rounded guy. He can grapple. I'd expect there to be a grappling advantage for Ferreira. But like I said, Vettori's going to compete there. I don't think it's a huge gap. And, like I said, if Marvin Vettori can stop Cesar Ferreira from fighting his fight, Ferreira's going to struggle. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Marvin Vettori to win a close decision, just like you said.
All right. Fair enough. We may be disagreeing there.
It's a close one.
I think Cesar has definitely the better grappling credentials. Yet Marvin, I think, is a better MMA grappler in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So as much as that fight made Israel better, I think it also made Vettori better. But we'll see. I mean, I don't think Vettori has fought since that fight.
He fought the guy, I can't remember the guy's name, he's a Russian guy. The guy that beat Abdul Azak Al Hassan or something.
Omari Makdov?
Yeah, that's the one.
And that was his draw?
Yep.
But yeah, so going into the odds here, for Vettori, he is the favorite. He is a minus 150 favorite, plus 120 for Ferreira. I feel like that's pretty spot on.
That's decent. That's fair. Yeah. I mean,
if he's a favorite, actually.
Yeah, if Vettori avoids Cesar Ferreira fighting his fight, those odds are pretty fair. But it's just the first round that scares me a little bit. After that, I'm pretty sure Vettori's going to be able to fight his fight. So 150, it's okay.
Yeah, it's funny because Ferreira, I remember when he first came into UFC, there was a lot of talk about his capoeira. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that.
So there was a lot of talk about him being Vitor Belfort's protege and having a lot of capoeira. I believe his nickname even was, is it still El Mutante?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they got rid of that too, because I mean, when he first came in, he was fighting at 170 as well, and he was just a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he ever made 170, but yeah, that his capoeira, this is just proof and point that his capoeira reputation has pretty much dissipated from earlier in his career. Now he's just looked at as a grappler, so that's interesting. And also, what's interesting is that guy who he's beat Carl Roberson, correct?
Yes, arm triangle.
Yeah, so exactly. So Carl Roberson is fighting ahead of him on this card against Wellington Turman, a guy making his debut, and that's the next fight on the card here, and it's at 185. And I will be breaking down Wellington. It's at 185, correct?
Yes, it is.
I will be breaking down Wellington. He is 22 years old. He's 15-2, and he's fought some extremely good guys early on in his career. He fought a guy who was 17-4 in Marcio Alexandre Jr., who 17-4 veteran. He seemed to really defend strikes well on his feet, kind of marched down his opponent and marched down his opponent who was longer than him and more experienced, and used punches. Basically seems to have a boxing base for the most part. And he did have a moment in the fight where he threw a wild knee against his opponent, and it ended up getting him in close. And immediately when he got in close, well, it looked like a mistake. He immediately got a body lock and slammed his opponent down.
I saw all of that. Yeah.
So, I definitely can see that being a spot for Turman to look to exploit Roberson. I think that he follows the blueprint he came up with in his last fight. Here, and similarly, it starts with trading a bit and then takes him down later in the round or later in the fight. Either way, but I think that Wellington ends up wearing him down and gets a second round submission. I really anticipate Wellington having a good performance. He's faced a lot of good guys leading up to this, and being able to amass a record of 15-2 at 22 is very impressive. So. Obviously, a lot of his opponents within that 15-2 were less than stellar, but again, he had some good tests, and I think those pay dividends for the 22-year-old. And round 2 submission over Carl Roberson.
Nice. Okay, so Carl Roberson comes into this fight 2-2 inside the UFC. Previously fighting on your favorite show, the Contender Series, where he got an extremely quick finish over Ryan Spann, who looked extremely good against Lil Nog.
It's looking better and better.
Yeah, for real. So 2-2. He's been a little rocky so far. Both losses come due to grappling. And yeah, he's primarily a kickboxer who is just struggling with grappling. So yeah, I watched Wellington too. I'm impressed with your breakdown for him. He looks very decent. I don't know if it was the smoking whilst I watched his tape, but his face looks a little bit like Nick Diaz. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
That you must have some different kind of weed over there in England.
Okay, so just rewatch a couple fights. Like when the camera's like only getting side of his face, it looks like a muscled up Brazilian version of Nick Diaz. It's weird. So watch out for that.
You're talking about Wellington, I assume, as opposed to Roberson.
Sorry?
I assume you're talking about Wellington and not Roberson?
Yes.
Okay, mild agreement, I guess.
So yeah, I basically agree with everything you said. Wellington, he looked very strong in the grappling, and Carl Roberson has only struggled with grappling. So if you're Wellington, you should look at this debut as, this could have been much tougher of a debut. And Roberson, I wouldn't be surprised if the grappling wasn't the difference and his kickboxing is the difference. So it's, once again, these are why the odds are so close on this card, because it's personal preference in every fight. Literally, if you're not in the octagon, you have an opinion and that is it. And, you know, it's one or the other here. Like, Carl Roberson is a better kickboxer, but... Yeah, and another thing you said, this guy's only 22 and he's had 17 pro fights. Yep. So, you know, being the more experienced guy in MMA and getting a debut against a guy that only loses to grappling, you have to be confident in that. So, it's a tough one. It's personal preference. But I'm going to take the Brazilian Nick Diaz to get a submission in round number 1.
Okay, well, the odds are not with us.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine.
This opened at minus 130 for Roberson, plus 100. I would think, okay. It is now minus 220 for Carl Roberson, plus 175 for Wellington Turman.
Oh, that's, you know, he can be putting a little treble. That's good money.
I have taken 3 dogs, and obviously I took them because I liked them. But of my 3 dogs, I feel most confident with Wellington. So actually, Souza, I feel most confident in. I feel least confident in my Nico Montano pick. This is those are interesting odds to me, at least. To put Roberson at minus 220 is. I have a hard time thinking of a guy in the UFC I'd put him at minus 220 at this point. But fair enough.
Maybe Nordeev should have been that.
Yeah.
I keep mentioning it like I bet on Nordeev. I didn't touch his line at all, but it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Minus 5. Wow.
Yep. It's against a good guy in Chance. I mean, shout out to Chance. That is one tough Native American.
Okay, so Josh Emmett.
No more Beneil Dariush and Draka Closa fight. Beneil got injured this week, so we had our one injury. We should have a missed weight on Friday as well, so stay tuned for that. Yep. Hopefully Closa gets a replacement. I was taking Beneil.
I was going to take Closa.
Oh, man. I could have chipped at that 14-16 fight. Didn't I? Oh, yeah, you gained one on it. That's right. Who's counting anyways? Not me. Why don't you lead us into our next breakdown?
Okay. Josh Emmett versus Mirsad Bektic, and I'll be breaking down another guy fighting out of Team Alpha Male. Josh Emmett comes into this fight 5-2 inside the UFC. Started at 155, dropped down to 145, and since then he's gone 3-1. You know, and his power seems to be the difference in most fights at 145, unless he's fighting a guy who's very powerful in Jeremy Stephens. It's a tough pick again. Bektic has just looked very good in all of his fights. Even, you know, one of the best comebacks of all time in Darren Elkins, Bektic looked very good in that fight. He has been training, Bektic he has been training at TriStar now for roughly 2 years. And he said in his last fight, before the fight, he's been learning a lot from GSP, you know, and there's tons of guys at TriStar who are just, you know, looking so good. Really tough fight. Josh Emmett, you know, obviously has the power. I think Bektic is a little smarter and more well-rounded. But I think if Bektic doesn't have a good start, I don't know if he can win a decision or even get a finish. It's really tough to finish Josh Emmett. He's very well-rounded himself, good scrambler. You know, and it's hard to take him down, man. And if he does, I see Josh Emmett, you know, getting right back up at least a couple of times. It's tough, though, because I think Bektic is a very intelligent fighter, so I don't see him getting caught with the power of Josh Emmett as well. So, once again, personal preference. Are you going to favour the power of Josh Emmett, trying to get in on the inside and land those hooks and those nasty, powerful overhands? Or are you going to take the guy who's looked very impressive pretty much his whole career at 145, very well-rounded, strong grappler? It's tough. But I'm going to stick with Bektic to have a good start to the fight and fight through adversity if it gets there and win a close decision maybe. So I'll take Bektic by decision.
Well, what did you say before this breakdown? Did you say 5 disagreements?
Yep.
Yeah, you're not. You're going to be sadly disappointed, my friend.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many disagreements we're going to have because it's not one here. Mirsad Bektic, the 20-year-old, now training on TriStar, as you mentioned. TriStar also training another up-and-coming featherweight who just fought last week in Arnold Allan. I love camps where there's a lot of momentum, where guys can be training with each other or training towards similar goals here. Mirsad Bektic preparing for a very different guy from Melendez, so I'm not saying they had the same camp, but it was two guys building towards big 145 fights at the same time. So Mirsad is 6-1 in the UFC. He's been a favorite in every single one of his fights. His only loss being a KO to Darren Elkins at -500. So for Mirsad, of course. And Mirsad is what I would describe as new school MMA for sure. He's good everywhere. He's been training everywhere from the beginning. He's quick. He's strong. He doesn't have very many holes in his game. It's going to be hard for anybody not named Darren Elkins to do what Darren Elkins did against him. Here, I think he's got a powerful counterpuncher to compete with, so I would anticipate Bektic getting this to the ground, getting into the clinch where he can kind of wear out the arms of his opponent, take out some of the gas. I think the speed will be the big difference, and I'm taking Bektic for a decision. So, yep, we agree here. Bektic is the favorite. I'm glad it's not ridiculous, -160.
Yeah, that is fair.
40.
Sorry, what was Josh?
+140.
+140, man. That's a fair price, because if Josh Emmett gets in the inside and lands those hooks, man, Bektic could go to sleep. But for the most part, I see Bektic basically doing what you just said.
So much faster.
Fair price.
Speaking of so much faster,
go ahead with your boy.
Okay, so I am very nervous / excited for this fight. It is the co-main event of the evening between Uriah Faber and Ricky Simón, one of my favorites currently. So I use the F word with him, but anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of this kid. So Ricky Simón, the 26-year-old, 5'6", 135er. One of his attributes that I think has made him great is the fact that he's short, actually. Really allows him, I think, to focus on what is within his reach, what he can do with his frame, and not overstep those boundaries, I think, actually, ironically. So, Ricky Simón, 15-1 now with 5 TKOs, 2 submissions. He's 3-0 in the UFC with a dominant win over Ronnie Yahya, a submission win on Mirab Divashvili, and a really impressive tough win over a Olympic wrestling training partner in Montel Jackson. So, like I said, he's one of my favorite prospects currently. He's a Dana White Contender Series winner, where he has the record for most takedowns in a fight with 15. He didn't get a contract from that, and he had to go win 2 fights in LFA where he became a champion. I really like this kid. I like his skill set. I like his wrestling and his ability to show killer instinct when he has to, like in the Dervishvili fight. The next fight after that, he had to face a really tall striker with excellent wrestling in Jackson. And he was able to somehow eliminate that huge difference in length in the grappling, which we saw with Chiesa and Diego, is a real killer. So then finally the last fight against Yahya, it was a nearly perfect fight for me. He chained his takedowns perfectly with his striking for 3 rounds. I think he's improving fight to fight. And I want to see Simón use his stand-up more here. I want to see leg kicks. I want to see a lot of leg kicks. And I want to see some fearless grappling also. I think that after facing Yahya, a legit specialist, and showing he could go to the ground, I don't see Simón showing a lot of fear for Uriah here. I think this is a passing of the torch, and I'm going to take Ricky Simón to get a decision, but a very dominant decision.
Nice. Uriah Faber. comes into this return fight 10-6 inside the UFC. It's been
40 years old.
Yeah, it's been over 2.5 years since he retired. He's had over 40 pro fights, and he's now 40 years old. I can only look at this and break this down in, this is a payday. This is a payday for Uriah Faber. Ricky Simone is just, he's looked so good. Uriah Faber, there's no doubt, he's been one of the best MMA fighters ever. There's no doubt he's in that talk. Obviously, I wouldn't put him in the top 10, but, he has been the guy. But he's not the guy anymore. It's not his time to shine. It's Ricky Simone's time to shine. This guy, you basically just went through all of his fights and spoke perfectly in what he's done. Even in the Ronnie Yahya one, I know he took Ronnie down a couple times, but for the most part, he dumped him. He literally dumped him. That was his way of saying, look, I'll grapple you, but you're going to be on your back and you're going to stand back up. I can take you down or I can even dump you. And, that was
no reason for him to be in Yaya's guard. That's the only place Yaya was winning the fight.
Exactly. And you look at the odds for that fight as well, and it's just, you look at how smart and intelligent Ricky Simone was in that fight, and it's just, it's his time to shine. He's a great wrestler, relentless. He's just looking so good. But if there was one negative I would speak about Ricky Simone, and I know he's your boy, but you kind of did this to my boy last week in Arnold Allan. There's only one negative, and I was happy to accept the negative with Arnold Allan, and I'm sure you will be with Ricky Simone. There's not a lot of killer instinct at the moment. In 16 pro fights, there's not many finishes. But apart from that, there's nothing negative to say. You can only assume that the killer instinct is growing fight by fight. Now, Arnold Allan got given a veteran and a legend, right? Some would say. And that's the same thing here. So I would expect Ricky Simone to actually get a finish in this fight. And I'm going to take him to get a round 2 TKO.
Well, I will just defend my boy for a second here, because I did acknowledge that he actually does have some killer instinct. I get it overall. He only has 5 finishes in his 16 fights.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
It's a good negative.
But in the Mirzadivashvili fight, he was down 2-0 in that fight. He lost. It was his debut. Lost the first 2 rounds. He knew he had to get a finish. He got a hold of that neck. He kept squeezing it. He did not let go for over a minute, and he got the finish.
Yeah. Amazing comeback.
So I do think that
there was someone else who was 2 rounds down and got a submission too.
Yeah, well, for some reason I don't count that one. It's different because this is my boy.
Yeah.
Touche. Okay, fair enough.
It's a very good negative to have. That's all I can say.
I just think that when you go back and watch a lot of Ricky Simone's fights, you realize that the reason he doesn't have a lot of finishes is because he gets up 2-0 in a lot of those fights.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not making excuses, although I'm making excuses. So this is my most confident fight of the night.
I would agree.
I will say that I will be building parlays around this fight. And I fully expect him to have his best performance yet in the octagon. So if that is correct, actually a second round TKO would make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I did have TKO. I crossed it out. So I'll admit it. I've been going back and forth between the two. I'm not going to have any props with Ricky. I'm just going to have to include him in some parlays here because I think he could get the finish in any way. I also think he could get a decision. I think that if this was a 5-round fight, I would be picking Ricky to get a decision or a finish. Yeah. So, and so now we're moving on to the main event of the evening, and I'll go ahead and lead us off in this one since now I'm getting some main events right, I'm getting some wrong. It's not really a thing of mine anymore.
Okay.
So I moved on, and this one is at 135 and is between Jermaine Randamie and Aspen Ladd, and I will be breaking down Jermaine Randamie, the Iron Lady, fighting out of AKA. She's 34 years old. She's 8-3 with 3 TKOs. 5-1, and in the UFC, she's currently on a 4-fight winning streak against Larissa Pacheco, finish against Anna Elmaros, win over Holly Holm, which many felt she didn't win, myself included, but they gave it to her, and a TKO of Raquel Pennington. She's the former UFC featherweight champion until she refused to fight Cyborg last year. And I think that decision's haunted her a tad since. Her only loss in the UFC is a TKO to Amanda Nunes. Other than that, she's won all 5 of her fights. I know she had the late punch controversy against Holm, but she really is a world-class kickboxer. Her last win against Pennington was in November of last year, and before that, she fought in February of 2017 against Holmes. So she fights kind of infrequently. She's, again, known for her power and world-class kickboxing. She likes to land those kicks to the body, and she's back down at 135, and I think she'll look to use a lot of leg kicks against Ladd, who puts a lot of weight on her lead leg as she moves forward, and strikes also. So I think that Germaine can definitely finish her inside the first 2 rounds. I think that the choice here is a finish inside 2 or Ladd by decision, honestly, or a late finish maybe. This is another close fight. I have been really back and forth. I'll say Ladd by decision, but I'm not super convinced, I'll be honest.
Nice. Okay, so Aspen Ladd. Before I go into the breakdown, most people look at this card and they go, why is Aspen Ladd versus Germaine de Randamie the main event? Now, my theory is, and I'm sure a few people listening would agree with this theory, my theory is the UFC like Aspen Ladd. They really like her, and in a 3-round fight, I'd maybe be favouring Germaine de Randamie here. But in 5 rounds, I'm pretty sure the UFC are confident in knowing Aspen can win a decision. And I'm going to go into why. So, Aspen Ladd, 3-0 inside the UFC, 5-0 inside Invicta. She looks like a top prospect in the 135 division. She's only 24 years old. You know, she's getting better and better. Germaine de Randamie is a top kickboxer. If this was strictly kickboxing, then I don't think Aspen Ladd comes close to winning that fight. But this isn't. It's MMA. So you look at Germaine de Randamie against Holly Holm. Now, you mentioned the shots after the bell. You know, they were terrible. A point should have been taken for the second one, definitely. But the thing I want to highlight in that fight is Holly Holm, if I can remember rightly, Holly Holm had a lot of octagon control. She held Germaine against the fence for quite a few minutes. Like, it must have been at least 6 or 7 minutes, something close to that. Now, you look at Germaine against Raquel Pennington. Germaine was held against the fence for a fair few minutes here and there. So, I'm piecing together that after the second round, the conditioning, the pressure, the grappling, all of that is going to be too much for Germaine, and it's going to turn into Aspen's fight. So, I took Sijara Eubanks against Aspen Ladd, and Sijara was like a +3 or something ridiculous like that. And that's a 3-round fight. And it was a really close fight. So the reason this is a main event is because they are giving Aspen Ladd every chance in the world to win this fight. And I'm behind it, because if you're Germaine de Randamie and you don't want to take a fight against the very best, you don't deserve to be here. And I really like her, man. I like her kickboxing. But I'm just saying it how it is. If you don't want to fight the best and you think you can just make your own rules up on who you fight, I'm happy they've made this a main event for Aspen Ladd. Obviously, you look at it and you go, that main event sucks. But there's good reasoning behind it. And I'm going to stick with the reason.
They got to build up someone in this division at this point. This division has been put into ruins thanks to the greatest of all time here. So this is one, like, they have to build up somebody at 135. Whoever wins this fight has just won a main event at 135. So
and Germaine de Randamie probably says no to that fight. I don't know, but I'm going to agree with you. Ladd decision.
And they probably also gave the 40-year-old Uriah Faber the option of, do you want to do 5. They probably gave him the Uriah or the Jose Aldo treatment, where they said, "Do you want to go 5 or 3?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard main event to break down when you look at it on paper, because the kickboxing of Jermaine is really good, but after 2 rounds, I really see the pressure, conditioning, strength, youth, all of that coming into play for 15 minutes. So I'm going to agree with you. Decision. What's the odds on this?
So the odds are with Aspen Ladd at -180, +155 for Jermaine.
Wow. Yeah, it could be a little closer, but I'll bet it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I wish I had picked Randamie now so I could bet that underdog.
It's a fair price.
Because I think if this was a 2-round fight, she wouldn't be an underdog. In the first 2 rounds, she's the favorite.
If this was a 3-round, I'd definitely, probably, most likely, definitely pick Jermaine.
Definitely, probably, most likely, maybe, possibly.
Definitely. Exactly.
Perhaps. Maybe.
Every word you could put there, but ending in the Randamie.
I like this main event. I actually am quite a fan of all. And so I don't mean to sound sexist here, but it's a rarity where I'm a fan of all the female fights on the card. My stake fight may actually have to be.
Is there a stake fight?
There's not really a stake fight on this card. To be honest, Beneil Dariush Closa was going to be it.
Maybe Darren Elkins running would be stake, but I want to see him survive.
It's going to be a freak show.
Yeah, I want to see him survive, man. He can do it.
There is, I will say it right now, there's not a stake fight on. I guess maybe, I'll be honest, since there has to be a stake fight for me, because every fight there is a stake, it will be the Ferreira Vettori fight. I'll have to be watching that one as
maybe. What's your fight of the night?
Well, it won't be that one, even though it could be. My fight of the night, I kind of mentioned it at the time I was breaking it down, and I'm going to stick with it. I think that the Mike Rodriguez fight and John Allan could be a really good fight and really wild while it lasts.
Nice. I'm going to stick with Touchy Fili and Sheymon Moares to put on a bloodbath kickboxing battle for 15 minutes.
Yeah, if there was a prop that there'd be blood in that fight, I'd say yes. And I'm sure that would be the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So, but other than that, I think that Ricky Simone, he has to come through. If he doesn't, I'll be gutted. I will be really gutted.
He comes through, mate.
Yeah, and I mean, I was nervous this week about Cheeto, and Cheeto came out and had a real test against his opponent, and I didn't enjoy one moment of that fight till he won. So this is probably going to be a similar type of ordeal for me. But it's just part of why I love this sport is I get emotionally invested in a lot of these guys. I am emotional with just about everything. I'm a poker player. I'm emotional with that. So I've learned how to be able to manage and handle my emotions as I'm gambling. So this is nothing new for me. Either way, appreciate everybody listening. I'm really looking forward to this card. Thank God the Contender Series is back tomorrow. Thank God PFL is back on Thursday. My full weeks of MMA have returned to me. No more of this going to parties and things on holiday weekends and interacting with people. Back to the fights for me. So thank you, everybody, for listening. If it was a little choppy today, that's my fault. Chico saw some dogs and heard some things he didn't like, so I had to take a couple breaks. So if there's a couple chops in there, apologize, but thank you all for listening. Enjoy the fights. Smack a comment down there for the giveaway or for whatever you feel like talking about down there, and we will respond to the comments. We appreciate them. Like, subscribe, check out Multiplex Movie Trivia. I did a co-hosting gig on there, and I should be returning to ring at some point soon. And peace. Thank you.
Yep. Appreciate you all, guys. Once again, next week, there's another card, there's another card, there's another card. Like, there's 14 weeks in a row of UFC, so we're going to be covering it all. And the UK next week, Leon Edwards, RDA main event. So we'll catch you then. And just like Aaron said, appreciate you all, and peace.